Hello, Instagram. I'm gonna get right into it instead of waiting for people because I am going to make this part of my wall. So I'm going to talk about tariffs today and the effect that they are having on my business. I am sick and tired of the false narrative that is being thrown about how great this is for US manufacturers. That is an outright, absolute lie. I am a US manufacturer and these are fucking killing me. And this is going to be a little bit ranty, but it is going to be an educational rant, goddammit. So hopefully you will learn something because I'm going to go through every single part that's used in a SkeinTwister and every single part that's used in a Swift. And I'm going to talk about exactly what that part is and where it comes from, okay? Because like people just don't fucking know. They just don't understand and yes. So it is a global manufacturing world that we live in. Not every country makes every single type of part or component. And it just so happens that we basically make no electronics components in the US. None whatsoever. Like this phone right here that I'm talking to you in is made in China. It is an Apple iPhone. It is made in China. Every single piece of electronics that you own is likely made in China or has parts that are made in China, parts that are made in Taiwan, parts that are made overseas. Nothing consumer related is made in the US, period. So, okay, that said, let's start in on SkeinTwister parts. Okay, so first, let's talk about this box, right? Nice aluminum box. This box is actually made in Canada. And I have, it's a die-cast box. It's a standard enclosure. This means that I can take advantage of the fact that it is an off-the-shelf part, that it is made in much larger volumes than I would be able to, have something custom made in. So I get a good price on it because of that, right? And I have them do some custom machining operations for me. They drill the holes basically in 3 sides of this so that everything can fit into it. And I get them just like this. Cool. Okay. So made in Canada, it is kind of interesting. It's a Canadian company that also has a US branch. So the way that they do it is that I'm not actually sure if the machining is done in Canada or in the US. It might be that the box is made in Canada, that the machining is done in the US, whatever. But they handle the import for me and I get it shipped they come to me from New York. Okay. Then we have screws, which we put the motors into the SkeinTwisters with. And I get those from McMaster Car, which is a US distributor. However, they are made in Thailand. So not made in the US. Cool. Okay, so, let's talk about the motor. Motor, totally made in China. I buy it directly from a Chinese manufacturer that I have a pretty long-standing relationship with now. This is a very uncommon motor in terms of its speed and exact configuration. I did source getting these made in the US originally, and if I wanted to pay 2 to 3x what I'm paying for them, I could get them made in I could get them from a US manufacturer who would be contracting to a factory in China, maybe even the same one. So there is 0 point to that, 0 point whatsoever. So I buy directly from China and I literally wire thousands of dollars to somewhere in China and a month later I get motors on my doorstep. It's kind of freaking magical. It's amazing. Okay, so those are the motors. Let's go on to foot pedals. Foot pedals. So I get these cool red cables now, again, from a US distributor, but they're made in China. That's what they say on the tag. So, pretty much all cables like this, all of your USB cables that you have lying around the house, all your power cables, made in China. Foot pedal itself with the switch inside of it, also made in China. We do this assembly here in-house because we are kind of particular about how they're put together because we've learned a lot over the years. The foot pedals are the one thing that gets the most wear and tear and generally wears out on a SkeinTwister. We have learned over the past, I don't know, how many years have we been selling? 7 years? About how they wear out and how they're abused. And so we have modified our strain relief process over the years, and we now have like a pretty good way of putting them together that we're pretty confident in. So we like to keep that work in-house, and it would also just be really expensive to contract out. Okay, so, you know, foot pedal made in the US from Chinese parts. And that is a very, very common thing. Okay, so that's the foot pedal. Clamps, shit, you can just, I mean, we ship them just like this. Hi, they're jet clamps. They are, this is my favorite, Echo in China. So yeah, made in China. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, the power supply. Power supply. Switching power supply. All of these, every single one of these bricks that you have in your house or bricks that plug into the wall, made in China, right? Right there, made in China. And again, we actually get these directly from the manufacturer there. So, you know, again, we are buying at the source because that allows us to get the best price and to be able to sell SkeinTwisters at what is goddamn an affordable price. And I put that in quotes because it's $550, okay? So like all of these little scrapes, right? Like hacking away at the corners of every single fucking thing that I source and sell. Like all of that enables me to build and sell and support this tool at the low motherfucking price of $550. Okay, let's keep going. Why stop now? All right, so let's see, we did screws that were made in Thailand. Oh, we have more screws. I don't know where these screws are made, but like I get them pretty cheaply. They are from a US distributor, but again, might not be made in the US, probably or not. This little cable, it is on the inside of a SkeinTwister and it attaches the knob to the circuit board. And this is made in China, and I get these custom made for me because, you know, they're a weird little configuration. I also did price these out being made in the US when I originally started. And yeah, if I wanted to, let's see, have a lead time of like 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks, and if I wanted to buy 500 at a time instead of 100 at a time, then I could pay 5 times as much for this cable. Of course, my answer is going to be no. All right, because it's not worth it. There's no value added to me to pay that much more for a part, to have to pass that cost on to the customer just to have it made in the US. And that is not true of every part, and we'll get into more parts that are made in the US specifically because I have more control over them. Okay, but we're not done. All right, so there are also these are the guts of the knob on the SkeinTwister. They're what's inside of it. And these are, I don't know if you can see this, assembled in China. Typical electronics part, made in China. Okay. Here, we'll get into some stuff that's made in the US. Why don't we do that? So, the hook is made in the US. Yay! You know, this would be pretty heavy to ship from overseas, and I found a place that did it for a good price, and like they're in the Midwest somewhere. They do a great job. They've been making hooks for me since day one. This is a custom part that I designed and had made. It's a weird shape. It is great for twisting yarn without wobbling. This very fancy sticker is also made in the US. Obviously it's, you know, our design, right? So that it goes along with the knob and you know what you're doing on the SkeinTwister and you know what mode you're in. But this is made in the US. Now, is it entirely from US supplied materials? This is actually a relatively complex little part, even though it's like, well, it's just a sticker, right? Well, yeah, it's just a sticker, but it's composed of a plastic backing, ink, and then there's like an over texture coat of this kind of like matte durable plastic. So it's like if you scratch it, you won't scratch, you'll just scratch through that clear coating on top. You don't actually scratch the graphics off. And that's super great for like a piece of industrial equipment that's going to get abused for a while, because like we get these back and the stickers still look pretty freaking great and you can wipe them off, and like they're in dye studios, so they're getting splashed, you know, the whole thing. Anyway, and then, you know, it uses a 3M adhesive on the back, and I have no idea where 3M is making their shit. Are they making their adhesives in the US? Are they making them overseas? No idea. So made in the US, but who knows where all of those different things that go into the sticker are made, or even the ink that is used to print on them. I don't know where that comes from. This part, this is a little spacer that's inside of the SkeinTwister, and it kind of like spaces the motor off so that it can be screwed nice and flat. And this part we were actually making in-house now that we have a laser cutter. We were having these made by a place up in the Bay Area that was a laser cutting shop, but now since we have our own laser, we're making them. The plastic is a bit of a crapshoot as to whether it is made in China or made in the US. We're just sort of using whatever scraps we have on hand because it doesn't matter, because nobody sees this, so it doesn't matter like what color it is or whatever. So this could absolutely be made fully of US made material, so we're just gonna call it like, you know, made all from US material and made by us in the US, just because it could be easily. Okay, now we have the wooden bases. These are actually done somewhat locally, a shop that's just up and over the hill. They have CNC router. It's actually a cabinet shop that I somehow sweet talked into doing these stupid bases for us. We like order a whole pile of them once a year, and they just like, they crank them out and they don't charge us a ton for them. It's like, you know, within the budget of the SkeinTwister. So I could probably get these made cheaper overseas, maybe, but not worth the hassle to resource because it's like fine what it is. Okay, and now we have this part, which is the knob itself, which is a custom design. So these are now being made by a place, I think it's in Fresno, or it's somewhere in California, and Central Valley-ish. And it is a 3D printing technique that is used to make this. It's not the same as a filament printer like the one that I have, so it uses more expensive equipment. It uses a special kind of powdered plastic in order to make these, and I have no idea where that's made. No idea, because it's also like a proprietary thing. So yeah, this is one that is like made in the US, but from materials of unknown to me origin. And we paint the little silver things on ourselves here because we care. Okay, that's the knob. So I think, oh, that brings us to the last two parts. This part, which holds the hook onto the shaft of the motor, the shaft coupler. This is made in China because there are a whole host of different sizes and shapes of these being made for the 3D printing industry. And so there are already shops in China that just have like an entire array of these, and that's where they're made, and that's where I get them from. To make this custom in the US, it would way increase the cost on this part, and there's no reason for me to do that whatsoever. So the most important part, my favorite part, is the circuit board. And so the circuit board is, it might seem like, oh, this is just one part. This is 27 parts, okay? There is the circuit board itself, which is a part that has to be made. And it is a custom design that I designed. I sent to a circuit board place. They make the circuit boards for me, right? Then there are 26 different parts that are soldered onto this circuit board. Every single one of those parts, like almost every one of them, is made, like has a different specification. It is a different part. It is made by a different manufacturer. None of them are the US. These are all Asia. These are predominantly China. And that is just how it is. There are no components. Nobody is making any electronics components in the US. So every single circuit board that you have around your house, it is all with Asian components, and the vast majority of them are at least assembled, soldered together in China. Vast, vast majority. So I do actually have a very, very good idea of US versus Chinese cost on this, because it is actually only recently that I switched my circuit board manufacturing to China for this part. And that is because of a lot of things, but you know, I came from a background of like small volume domestic electronics manufacturer, mostly for the defense industry. That's what I did like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, right? And that's where my experience comes from. And, you know, when you're defense industry and you have defense industry budgets, you don't care how much it's going to cost. And it kind of has to be made in the US because otherwise that would be exporting technology, and there are rules against that. You can't do that with like government defense contracts. So, so I wasn't used to outsourcing boards to China. I didn't have a lot of experience with that at the point in time that I started doing the SkeinTwisters. And so I basically opted for the cheapest US manufacturing I could find. And at that point in time, like, I think the circuit boards were about $15 a piece. And I'm like, okay, $15 for an assembled circuit board, that's pretty reasonable. Like, I feel like that's like within budget for this product. And sure, let's do it. So, but over these past 7 years, my costs have crept up and up and up. The lead times have gotten longer for the cheap, you know, cost. And when I went to order boards this time around, they were going to be $26 a board. And I was like, shit, I'm going to have to increase SkeinTwister costs. Like, if that in order to accommodate that, there's just like no way that I could keep them the same. And I didn't want to do that. And so, you know, I was like, well, shit, in the past 5 years, Chinese fabs have gotten a lot more accessible to US customers, and they've gotten better websites, a lot better customer support and communications. You know what you're getting. And I'd had a bunch of different miscellaneous prototypes of stuff made by some circuit board places like directly in China. So I was way more comfortable ordering from them. I had like verified that their quality was really, really good, better than a lot of US fabs, in fact. And so I was like, cool, I'll have them quote this board. And yeah, so the cost of that board, having them assembled in China and switching, was $7. So $7 versus like $26. And, oh, it was like 2 weeks instead of 6 to 8. What do you think I'm going to choose, right? Like, there's no reason for me to have this made in the US when I can get it faster and better quality made in China, where they have an entire industry that is competitive, that knows what they're doing, that has, you know, educated workers, you know, working on this stuff. Like, that is the advantage. We just don't have that many circuit board places in the US at all. And they're all like working on defense shit where it doesn't matter if they're expensive. That's just the way it is. So yeah, so let's like look, let's see if I can kind of swing this around, and we'll do like a little recap here. So I'll swing this around. And so I kind of have them, you know, on the table here. This is made in the US. This is made not in the US, but not in China. And all of these parts from the SkeinTwister are made in China. All of those. So, you know, that is basically what I'm looking at. And we assemble SkeinTwisters here, we test them here, we support them here. We're like a team of 2 people, you know. And, you know, I'm looking at my costs for all of that group of stuff tripling. And that's, you know, 2/3 of the cost of the SkeinTwister right there are those parts. So it's just, it is brutal. It is unfair. And right now, like, what does that mean for me? Well, I am in a somewhat lucky position of, it just so happens that like I try to buy SkeinTwister parts basically once a year, because I have to order them in, even so, I have to order them in big enough batches that it makes sense. I can't just order like 1 box or like 1 circuit board. I have to order things in batches of 100 at least. And it just so happens that I just had, that our, you know, the time of year when we run low on stock and have to do the big reorder is like right around Christmas, and it fucking chaps my hide every year because I always want to push that off into the next fiscal year, and I haven't been able to. And this year it was actually somewhat lucky. So I don't have to raise prices for a while, but like when I look at what will happen this fall, I don't know. And the thing is, and this point has been made so many times, is that like you can shut off trade like a fire hose, for sure, like has just happened with tariffs, because people have stopped buying stuff. Manufacturers have stopped buying things, which means that whatever stock is on the shelves, whatever stock is in Amazon for all those cheap goods you like off of Amazon, when that's gone, there's going to be no stock. And it's going to be like COVID again, where, you know, things just aren't being made and we're running out of stuff. And it's absolutely, especially triple E, because that's what the tariffs are. That's true of electronics. And yeah, and then to turn that back on, though, takes a while, because you have to get shipping ramped up again. You have factories in China that have maybe transitioned from their US customers, and they found other customers that are, you know, filling their time and that they're making things for and exporting now. So, you know, will you be able to get the same like lead times and service that you got before? And, you know, even if they were reversed today and just like made nothing, you know, it's still going to be many, many months until things are even sort of approaching normal again. And so that makes also like, you know, the whole holiday season very unsure and rough for anybody who's in the retail market. Absolutely. Which, you know, I'm not really with the SkeinTwisters, but I am on Swifts. So you want to do the same thing with Swifts? Let's do the same thing with Swifts, because, you know, there are fun, interesting things to learn there as well. Okay. I'm going to come over here a little bit more on the table. Maybe have another sip of some nice calming mint tea. Should have spiked it. Okay. So, Swifts are, you know, not electronics heavy like the SkeinTwister is. So there are more parts that are made in the US and there are fewer parts made in China, but there are still significant parts that are made in China, or significant materials that come from China. So, okay, let's go through it. So first of all, we have like these hub parts that go at the top and the bottom of the Swift. And these are all parts that are 3D printed, and they are 3D printed by somebody in Oregon who I have a really good relationship with, who like is able to print these parts to my specifications, which is not always easy to be repeatable with 3D printed parts. So that is all well and good. However, pretty sure he doesn't use filament that's made in the US. All of the plastic filament that is used in 3D printing, there is filament that's made in the US. It is more expensive. People who have these 3D printed farms and make their living 3D printing are extremely cost sensitive, because it's a really, really competitive industry and market. And so, you know, a lot of them will use filament that is perfectly good. That's, you know, either from China or from India. Those are like the main other places that are making 3D printing filament right now. So very likely it comes from another country. Then we have this plate. This is laser cut in the US, not by me because my machine does not do metal. It is aluminum. I assume it comes from the US, but I could be wrong about that. But in general, the US does make a lot of aluminum, so it's like US or Canada is probably pretty likely for aluminum parts. This screw actually is made in the US. Look at that. One screw that's made in the US. One out of all the screws I use. This part is the top little finial. This is also 3D printed. We 3D print this one in-house because it's 2-color and it would be expensive and difficult to outsource. And it's little and our printer is great at these, and so we do them in-house. The filament I use is made in China because I have a bamboo printer. I use the filament that my printer manufacturer makes. because it is good filament that's made for like the higher flow rates and higher temperature profiles that this particular printer uses. So I have a really pretty easy time with it, and it prints well, and you know, I don't really have to worry about it. And they also have a really good purple color, which is important, which also shows up. It's a really nice opaque purple that shows up very well on black, which was actually an issue. I was using some other different kinds of 3D of purple filaments that were more translucent, because for whatever reason, this particular material, like, colors tend to be more translucent in it than opaque. And yeah, I would have to actually do black and then a white layer and then the purple in order to get it to show up. And so for these, I can just print the black ones, just black and purple, and it shows up, and it's great. So yep, made here in the US with filament that comes from China. Then this part is kind of similar to the knob part that I showed you earlier. It is also a 3D printing technology, but it is a fancier 3D printing technology that uses kind of powdered plastic in a sintering process. So like lasers shoot at it and it gets all molten in places and makes your part. It's pretty cool. Makes really strong parts, very, very accurate parts. And since this goes around the shaft, it needs just to be like a little more accurate than usual. And this, where the fuck am I getting this from? Where am I getting this made? I am getting this made in the US, but it is, again, I don't know where their plastic material comes from. Don't know. Could be US, could be elsewhere. This spring is actually from a USA spring manufacturer. Look at that. Woohoo, that's in the little, it's part of this whole collar assembly. So this is actually made in the US from steel, which is probably also made in the US, maybe. But again, don't know. These little rings, those guys that hold these in this part are also made in the US. So that's good. They're kind of like a little specialty ring that doesn't require like specialty retaining ring tools. Did that on purpose because if anybody had to take it off to repair it, I didn't want them to have to like have some sort of weird specialty tool to do that. You can just like pop those off with a screwdriver. And then we have two different types of washers that we use. Funny story here. So, yeah, so some of these washers are like a little bit visible because they actually go underneath this piece at the top of the shaft. And we were getting them from McMaster-Carr. It was fine. They actually are made by a US manufacturer. So McMaster says that the country of origin is the US. So that's actually like kind of surprising and interesting. These ones are a slightly different size that go further down the shaft. And so these are all actually made in the US. But for these white ones, since they were kind of visible, like around the top hub, we were getting them from McMaster, and then all of a sudden we got a batch that was like super yellowy. Like nylon can be white, but it can also be sort of like this natural white, which is a little more yellow in tone. And it is probably something that nobody would have ever noticed, but I did, and I didn't like it. I didn't like how it was a yellowy white and how our hubs are like a nice white. And so we're actually being freaking stupid and crazy, and we're cutting these out on our laser cutter. And so we're getting sheets of thin plastic in and cutting our own washers so that we know that they're white. And the plastic sheets say that they're made in the US. Okay. Shafts. I did have a batch of shafts that were made in China, and I didn't like them as much. They were just, there wasn't anything wrong with them, but they were not as consistent and exact in diameter as I wanted them to be. And so we switched these to getting them made actually like just down the street from us. There's like a super cool little machine shop. I've known the guys there for a long time, and they're stoked to be working on this, you know, fun, weird local yarn thing. And yeah, so they do like, I think I get like 250 of these at a time in order to make the price pretty reasonable. And yeah, they make them for me and they do a great job. And it's like exactly within my specifications, and it's super uniform diameter, like for all of them. So, you know, this is one of those cases where it's like, yes, I'm paying like, you know, maybe $5 more per shaft. It might not be that much. It might only be like $3.50 or something more, but like totally freaking worth it because I am getting the quality of product that I like out of it, and I have like a good relationship with the vendor. And so if there was anything that's wrong, and actually they did actually mess up a little bit on the first batch that they did, and I was like, oh guys, you kind of like threaded this a little bit too much and not according to my specs. And they were like, oh, sorry, we were trying to do you a favor and we didn't really realize that you were using the thread ends as a stop. And I was like, yeah. So anyway, so they ended up like not redoing the whole thing, but they ended up like remachining the tops of these for me. And it's like, that kind of stuff is really nice to be able to happen just down the street. Because yeah, like if I was getting that from China, that like there wouldn't have been anything I could have done about it. I would have been paying the guys down the street to like fix the other mistake. So yeah, I like, you know, for important parts like that, I really do enjoy having like a good relationship with the manufacturer. Okay. More screws. These screws are made in Taiwan, not the US. Cool. What else is made in Taiwan? These are made in Taiwan. What are these? These are all of the little silicon pieces that tie the struts together. Taiwan. If I had to make those in the USA, it would literally cost me like $10,000 in just setting up molds to make those. So like, no. No, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm going to use a part that's already being made for other things, and like I can get that economy of scale. Shaft collar, this little guy, it stops your Swift from like umbrella-ing. This is also made in China. It also kind of falls into the realm of that like little parts that are made for various CNC things, like the shaft collar for the or the shaft coupler for the SkeinTwister. There are tons of places that just make this sort of thing in every size and shape, and so they already make them. They're in the business of making them. You buy them from the people who make them, and so these are made in China. What else? So these guys form the rings at the top and the bottom of the hubs that hold all of the struts onto the hubs, made in China. We get to the clamps, also made in China. Looked everywhere for a US source, not made in the US, made in China. And they're really good clamps. They're way better than anything else. So this one's gonna hurt. I'm just warning you all. Made in China, I know. And I tried to source cotton bags with some custom printing from the US in like a custom size and shape. And I would have had to order 500 at a time, and they would have cost me 3 to 4 times as much. And I couldn't afford that budget. Like, so, you know, Swifts are like $150 to $200 item, which is still expensive for a Swift, right? And I needed some way for people to store them and protect them because, you know, the struts are made of acrylic, and acrylic can get scratched if it's, you know, next to other pokey things. And so I needed to provide that as part of my product, a proper way to store it. And like, there was no US option that was within my budget. It just wasn't something that I could do. So that was a bummer for me to have to outsource a textile product, but that's what happened. So then the last thing on the Swifts, the most important thing, all of these amazing, colorful, glittery struts. Guess where this very specialty glitter acrylic, are you ready? Sorry, I had to pause there. My phone is running out of batteries. Better make this short. Better wrap it the fuck up. All right, so glittery, sparkly, wonderful acrylic, made in China. It is not made in the US. There are a couple of colors that I get from a US distributor that might be made in the US. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it is a very small number. It's only like 3 or 4 colors. And all of the rest of them are made in China. That like full spectrum of the rainbow, having the glitter that is having the glitter that's the actual color of the strut and not just like silver glitter mixed in with something. Like all that stuff is made in China. The specialty space themed ones, all of that is made in China, because that actually still is like a kind of a little bit of a hand done process, kind of like marbling paper almost. So there are some acrylic colors that I know pretty sure are made in the US. The mattes, I believe, are all made in the US, and I think the neons might be made in the US as well. But yeah, vast majority of all of the sparkly made in China. So yeah, so here, let's do the same kind of thing here, where I pile these things, right? So here for Swifts, we have this relatively smaller pile of parts that's made in China. We have these 2 parts that are not made in China, but not made in the US. And then we have a larger pile of parts here that are all made in the US. So, you know, it really depends upon the part, but like nothing I make is free of, you know, some parts that are made in China. And so to have suddenly being charged 145% tariffs to 175% tariffs, because sometimes manufacturers are just covering their ass and they're like, yeah, we'll refund you the difference, right? You know, that percentage means that I am paying almost 3 times as much as I would have paid a few months ago for this part. 3 times as much. And yeah, again, like, it's just the way manufacturing works. Like, different places make different things, different companies make different things, and different companies are located all over the world. And, you know, China has done a really great job of manufacturing electronics and really pouring a lot of effort and resources into there in the way that our government doesn't really put into things unless you're a big enough company to hire a lobbyist or, you know, have some sort of politician in your back pocket, you know, then sure, you can get deals. But like the rest of us, psh, So yeah, again, with Swifts, it's a little bit of the same kind of lucky situation as I was in the SkeinTwisters, where I did a bunch of buying of the parts that I'm getting from China and like other inventory things in general around the turn of the year, around the beginning of the year. So I am relatively set for, you know, the next few months. But again, like, don't know what's going to happen this fall. And I have 2 other projects that have been, that, you know, I was really hoping to release this year, new products that, you know, I think will be wider spread, because like, dude, it's a fucking struggle every single day. Like I need this space. I have like an actual shop space, and I need shop space in order to make things. I need an employee to make things. So I have overhead costs, and it is a struggle to do what I do and just to meet those costs. And like, I personally have not been making, like, I have not been making enough money to live on in several years, and am relying on the graciousness of family and, you know, the help of friends in my, you know, doing some work in my business here and there to like get by. And so, you know, I'm always trying to look at new things, trying to make new things that will have more of a market draw, and like with the excitement with that LED hat and with some other things that I have on the plate, I was like, ooh, yes, I think that these are going to be good. These are things that I could absolutely make and wholesale to yarn stores, which I don't have a ton of stuff that I can do that with right now. The Swifts sort of, but it's not at the margin that they want. And yeah, and now all of that shit is just like record scratch on hold, because I can't buy things. Like, I can't buy circuit boards right now because like $100 order of circuit boards, which was like kind of more or less a no-brainer. You know, you do a lot of revisions before you're finally done with something. So, you know, it's like $100 here, $100 there. Now we're talking like $300 here, $300 there. And that's a much bigger decision for me. And also not knowing, are they just, you know, are they going to go away next month? I don't want to be like shelling out more than I have to now if I could just wait for a little while and see what happens. And that's what I think everybody is doing. We're just like waiting to see what fucking happens. Because there's nothing else we can do. So anyway, like, you know, once you have a global economy and global manufacturing supply chains and like relatively free trade like we did, you can't just shove that back in Pandora's box and be like, oh, it's all fine. It's totally fine. Like, no, it just doesn't work that way. What happens is that other countries are going to enjoy free trade and they're going to start making stuff, and we're going to be SOL, and everything that we buy from, you know, I mean, shit, I was looking at my silverware, which is like an IKEA set of silverware that I got 25 years ago, right? You know what it says on the back? Made in China. Like, it is things that you don't even think about too. It is just it's everywhere, and we like our cheap Chinese goods. And, you know, inexpensive doesn't always actually mean low quality either. So I think that that's a really important thing, because I think a lot of times, like, Chinese manufacturing gets really unnecessarily poo-pooed when there are like good and bad manufacturers everywhere, and that includes with labor practices. Like, don't tell me that like people working on at minimum wage here in the U.S. that can't afford healthcare and can't afford to live are like somehow not working in sweatshops. You know, like. Anyway, okay. My phone is running out of batteries, and I'm going to put it on charge, and I think I'm going to trade this tea for a beer, and I hope that like people watching this learned something. I hope that you think about this. I hope that you pressure all of your politicians to get off of their asses and make this fucking stop, because like the whole economy is just a mess right now, and it's only going to get worse. Yay, cheery thoughts from Carrie. All right, I will see you all next time. Bye.